This is God and Autobiography, the podcast, a dramatic adaptation and continuing discussion of the book, God and Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher by Jerry L. Martin. He was a lifelong agnostic, but one day he had an occasion to pray. To his vast surprise, God answered in words. Being a philosopher, he had a lot of questions, and God had a lot to tell him.
Episode 189. Welcome to God and Autobiography, the podcast. This is episode 189, and I'm Scott Langdon. This week, we turn our focus to episode 19, God Explains How All Religions Exist. It's in this episode that God explains to Jerry that what has been traditionally known as the problem of the diversity of revelations is not actually a problem at all. In fact, God tells Jerry to get more anthropomorphic and imagine what kind of person God must be for his interactions with human beings. God explains that he grew as a self in response to the interiority of others and wanted to communicate more fully. Next week's episode is a return to the Life Wisdom Project series, and Jerry welcomes back as his special guest our good friend Mikhail Sergeyev to talk about this new revelation about revelations. So this week we bring you episode 19, God Explains How All Religions Exist. I hope you enjoy the episode.
If there is one God, why are there so many religions? Philosophers call this the problem of the diversity of revelations. But I was told,
there's no reason to think the diversity of revelations is a problem, any more than for a therapist to say different things to different clients whose needs and situations differ.
That analogy didn't take me very far. The therapist, like a doctor, is giving advice depending on the needs of the client. But God is giving different people contradictory stories about himself, also about how they should live. Lord, why not just give everyone the whole truth?
Your question has presuppositions, that I've given different incompatible stories to different cultures. This is only apparently true. If you think them through, they are different pieces of the same puzzle.
Perhaps each religion is like a single eyewitness report of some strange event, such as an alien landing. The reports might be wildly different from one another. The challenge would be to sort them out and put them into a single coherent account.
Not exactly. It's not to blend the religions into a single synthesis or theology. It's to put them into one story.
I didn't see how to put the pieces into any kind of story. I'm not getting anywhere, Lord.
Get more anthropomorphic. Look at what kind of person I must be from my interactions with human beings.
Get more anthropomorphic? What a thing to be told. It is just the opposite of what the big thinkers tell us to do.
The story begins with creation, the evolution up to life, animals, early human beings. Then to the very ancient communications that require language and memory. As I've explained, I grew as a self in response to the interiority of others, and I wanted to communicate more fully and at a higher level. . This communication is somewhat possible with early human beings who recognized my presence in nature and in life, and also heard, if somewhat dimly and inchoately, my other promptings, such as conscience, the sense of right and wrong, fine sensibility, appreciation of nature and beauty, love amongst creatures, and mystical union.
The next phase is what I wonder about. It looks to me as if you communicated some sense of moral order and hierarchy, reverence for life and death, a sense of the meaning of life. I am feeling that this is your voice, not mine, Lord.
Yes, it is. They were understanding me well enough to understand that life has a meaning, a beginning and an end, and the sense of a meaningful movement from one to the other, summarized, judged, reckoned at the end. Death and the hope of immortality, which isn't merely the fear of death, but the understanding that there is a vertical dimension to life, and that its meaning does not stop with death, that there is a larger story the individual is part of, and his and her spiritual development, in fact, is not limited to just one life.
Please go on, Lord.
My presence in a person when felt results in awe, conscience, appreciation of beauty, humbling before the cosmic order, and so forth. Don't think of my relations to people as tapping out telegraph messages that already have a precise meaning. I understand my nature better as I articulate it. Or better way to put it, as humans hear it, process it, and articulate it.
Is this the key, then? Not so much God's trying to communicate something specific, as people themselves responding to some aspect of the presence of God.
I act over the centuries in reference to individuals, but also movements, cultures, and the like.
But only individuals receive communications.
Just listen for the moment. I interact with mankind, with the universe in many different ways. Do not assume the only interaction I have is the same I have with you. With some, it is conversational, but with others, it is by inspiration, by my spirit moving through them, infusing institutions, cultures, art, music, dance, symbolism, ideational systems, thought forms.
Why is culture so important?
There are many ways of actualizing the human story. Culture enables lives of different types of significance and meaning.
But why in terms of your story?
I come to people in all their particularity, not to mankind as such. The Chinese is one way of being. The primitive is one way of being. I come to each in its own terms. Each enables me to show a different side of myself. Do you think I could come to the ancient Jews in the same way I came to the 7th century Chinese, to Americans today, to you?
So any single conception of God will only grasp one of your aspects?
Yes, you see the problem. My nature is quite variegated. People see one aspect and not another.
I wondered how many aspects there were to God. I had never read the Bible cover to cover before. When I got to the end of the Old Testament, I told Abigail, this is not a success story. Over and over, the people of Israel lapse into faithlessness. When I prayed, I was told,
Indeed, in a sense, no story of human interaction with God is a success story. However, that is only half the picture. There is also enormous success, both individually and at a cultural level.
Wouldn't it help if I had some sense of the overall direction of the story?
It's too soon to really go into this. Let me just say this. It is not simply progressive. It is paradigmatic, iconic. Do not look for one thing, one religious phase, for example, to build on a previous stage. Look for iconic moments in which something unique is realized. These are breakthrough moments. Not everything meaningful has a developmental pattern, not even a meaningful story or history. Imagine a tale in which first the hero acquires courage, then wisdom, then compassion.
I take it that the hero is not moving up a scale of virtues. The opposite order, compassion, then wisdom, then courage, would be just as good.
The desire for a direction is a product of human attachment to will. People want the satisfaction of getting somewhere. Step back from willfulness, and you will see it differently.
But Lord, I thought your story didn't move randomly from one moment to another, but to higher levels of development. Is that wrong?
No, not at all. I have evolved, developed, like a child born into a new life. The learning for human beings is also a learning for God. But much learning has the pattern I have described rather than a one stage leading to the next quality. As you develop my story, this will become clearer.
One day, I learned more about God's story when I asked simply, "Where should I begin today, Lord?"
Start at the beginning.
I felt drawn into God once again at the creation. Lord, we seem to be at the point where the world has been unfurled and life begins.
Yes, and that goes on as we have discussed. Don't you feel my loneliness, my searching, questing for something alive, yearning for interaction?
Yes, I do, O Lord.
Ask yourself what I'm looking for.
Love,
Well, yes, but what is love?
interaction, communication, understanding.
Yes, I long to be recognized, to be understood, and then to be taken in.
I wondered why a great being like God would need to be loved by mere mortals. Why does that matter to you, Lord? You've got it all, just being God.
That's silly. This is what I am. I am like a function looking for a variable. I am only half the equation.
I looked for a humbler analogy. Like cement looking for bricks to hold together?
Okay.
Is that connection only what you need, or is it also what the world needs?
Both, obviously. In your analogy, the world is like the bricks that need to be held together.
But Lord, I sense that your yearning is not just an incompleteness, like needing a pair of gloves. It feels like a craving.
Yes, it is a deep internal dynamic that drives me forward to do the things I do. I unfurl the world and call forth life and send signals to people.
Sometimes words came so fast I could barely keep up, and some of my notes are little more than scrawls. Also, I sometimes rushed because of an underlying fear I was somehow just making all this up. I was trying to write it down faster than I could possibly have thought it up myself. God picked up on that.
Don't be so frantic. You're writing this down fearfully, rushing, and hope you are not just making this up, and that something will come up that looks insightful or profound. Relax, and let me tell you what I have to say, my story.
Yes, Lord. But look, it all sounds quite ungodlike, undivine to me.
Where do you get your idea of what's divine? What makes you think you know what it is like to be God? You wouldn't presume to tell a bat what that is like. Just listen and feel.
The feeling that comes to me is your desire to call into being a corresponding being. It seems a lot like the dialectic of self and other in Hegel. Subjectivity desires to objectify itself, as it does in artifacts, and to subjectifies the surrounding world, as it does in interpretation, and even higher, to encounter another subjectivity.
Yes, Hegel's very insightful on this score, but I am not working out a dialectic. I am not a sublation of a sublation.
That is Hegel's jargon for stages of the dialectical process.
I am a person searching for...
That's what I wonder, Lord. I can't quite imagine what you are searching for. Just interaction? That seems too limited and, in a sense, too easy.
You're right to be puzzled. Perhaps speaking of loneliness is misleading. Why does a human being look for love? It's not just for company, that's companionship, not love. You want to pour yourself, your concern, your destiny into another person, and you want them to respond in kind, to understand and sympathize with and care about you, and to share your life story so that I becomes we. And the result is not just good feelings or good times. It is ontological. It is virtually molecular. The constitution of the universe is altered by my love and my being loved. You can't just say God so loved the world. Love is a two-way street. Anything unilateral is merely an effort at love, not its fulfillment, not its achievement.
How does this relate to your story, Lord?
You could tell my story, one version of it at least, through the history of love. What has love meant and been over time? From Abraham's love for his wife and his son and his God, through the Ramayana and the compassionate Buddha, and Jesus and Plato's philosophy as eros toward wisdom, to Christian chivalry and Buber's I thou, these are stages that reflect my development and my interaction with human beings and their developing response.
Aren't these stages progressive, then? Don't they move upward?
That's not a helpful question. Let me go on. The telos of the world is both eminent and transcendent. It is eminent in the sense that the seeds of love are planted in the world itself, in the human heart, in people's animal nature. That is the driving force of sexuality, which has an analog even on the molecular level. It is transcendent in that there is an outward pull toward the ideal, toward love of the highest kind. So there is the telos of the thing's nature or person's nature pushing him or her forward, and the telos as an ideal and an object of love pulling him or her forward.
Lord, where do we go from here?
Let's go to China.
Thank you for listening to God and Autobiography, the podcast. Subscribe for free today wherever you listen to your podcasts and hear a new episode every week. You can hear the complete dramatic adaptation of God and Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher by Jerry L. Martin by beginning with episode 1 of our podcast and listening through its conclusion with episode 44. You can read the original true story in the book from which this podcast is adapted, God and Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher, available now at Amazon.com and always at godanautobiography.com. Pick up your own copy today. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, please email us at questions@godanautobiography.com and experience the world from God's perspective, as it was told to a philosopher. This is Scott Langdon. I'll see you next time.